What's important to be aware of is that travelers traveling without a real ID, compliant ID, or another acceptable form of identification should be prepared to experience some delay at the TSA security checkpoints that will potentially impact their travel. Bottom line is that it's best to get your real ID sooner rather than later so you don't risk missing your flight. I want to go back and just hit again on some of the common alternative forms of identification that you can use if you don't have a real ID license. That includes passports, a global entry card, or any other Department of Homeland Security Trusted Traveler Program identification, such as Nexus, Sentry, and FAST, a permanent resident card, a foreign government issued passport, among others. Again, our website, tsa.gov, lists the other acceptable forms of identification you can use at the checkpoint. We anticipate a significant number of travelers will be applying for Real ID as this deadline is fast approaching. We are really down to the wire with 1 month left to go. And you know what? Travel like a pro. By that I mean get your Real ID and you'll be traveling like a pro. And it'll save you lots of time and hassle. This is why we encourage everyone who travels or anticipates traveling after May 7th of this year to get their Real ID now. To wrap up, basically, Real ID is intended to improve the reliability and accuracy of driver's licenses and identification cards while inhibiting the ability of those who want to cause harm or want to defraud the system from being able to do so. The enforcement date, again, May 7th. Mark that in your calendar. Failure to comply will result in delays and additional screening, which could lead passengers to miss their flights. Any additional information will be posted on our website at www.tsa.gov. I've got my Real ID. Do you? All right. So now we're going to have Camila Barco from the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles, who will also give some remarks. All yours.
All right, well, thank you, Lisa, for those details about Real ID. I'm Camila Barco, the Public Relations and Media Liaison at the Department of Motor Vehicles. First, I want to thank TSA and Washington Dulles Airport for letting us talk about Real ID here at Dulles Airport. And it's fitting that we're here since a lot of passengers in the coming months will be traveling. Some will be traveling internationally, others will be traveling domestically. For those planning a domestic flight this summer, whether they're going to Arizona, New York, California, or anywhere in the U.S., you will need a Real ID compliance driver's license, or like Lisa said, another federally accepted document like a U.S. passport to board a flight starting May 7, 2025. At the Virginia DMV, we've been working hard to make sure Virginians who are looking to get a Real ID can get one. Our latest numbers as of March of 2025 show that we have issued more than 4.1 million Virginia Real IDs since October of 2018, and that accounts for 59% of all active licenses and IDs statewide.
The story begins on September 11th, 2001, when 19 hijackers boarded planes, 19 individuals boarded planes that they eventually hijacked, crashing them into the Pentagon, a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and of course the World Trade Center in New York City. About 3,000 people died as a result of those hijackings, and I can tell you not a single one of those hijackers had a valid form of ID. After that incident, President Bush called together a commission, the 9/11 Commission, to look into the happenings on that day and make recommendations. One of the recommendations was to enhance the form of identification that people use when they are coming through security checkpoints. Congress then passed the Real ID Act of 2005, 20 years ago. It took states many years to be able to be compliant with the security regulations involved in making those Real ID licenses, making them compliant with the regulations so that they could all have enhanced security features in the licenses, and so that the DMVs could figure out a way that they could individually store the data that people were required to bring to the DMVs to get their Real ID licenses. Then, shortly before the pandemic, we were supposed to start enforcing Real ID. Of course, then there's the pandemic, and so we delayed that until after the pandemic, and that time for enforcement is exactly 1 month away. 1 month away. So secure driver's licenses and identification documents are a vital component of our national security framework. Real ID is a coordinated effort by the federal government to improve the reliability and accuracy of driver's licenses and as well identification cards. The improvements are intended to inhibit terrorists' ability to evade detection by using fraudulent identification, as what happened on 9/11. The Department of Homeland Security and the Transportation Security Administration are both committed to enforcing the Real ID Act. Therefore, beginning 1 month from today, all airline passengers aged 18 and over, including TSA PreCheck members, must present a state-issued Real ID credential or an alternative acceptable form of identification, the most common being a passport, at our security checkpoints. Now, our website, tsa.gov, has a whole list of other acceptable forms of identification that you can go to and you can check to see if you have an alternative acceptable form if you do not have your Real ID. Of course, again, you keep that Real ID driver's license in your wallet so you have it at all times, and it's not always intuitive that, maybe you're flying from Washington, D.C., maybe you're flying from Richmond, Virginia to another domestic airport, and, you don't have your Real ID license. You have to bring something else, such as your passport. You don't typically have your passport in your wallet, so it's something else you're going to have to think about before you fly. So how do you get your Real ID? Virginia residents have the option of getting a Real ID license, or they can get a standard license that is not Real ID compliant, and we'll hear more about that in a bit. I want to stress that, again, we will be beginning enforcement of Real ID in a way that, that considers the potential impact to travelers and the impact to airports during implementation. Why? Because we know that long lines and delays not only impact airline schedules and increase cancellations and, of course, are inconvenient to travelers, but they do that could also increase possible security risks and escalate any possible physical and verbal abuse of our TSA officers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Underwood, and members of this committee for giving me the honor of being before you today. As a former colleague of the House of Representatives, I recognize the important role that you play in oversight over the federal government and our agencies, and I'm grateful for the chance to come here and talk about all of the good work that the Department of Homeland Security has done, the employees and the people who walk alongside us each and every day to follow through on what President Trump has committed to the American people, and that is to make America safe again. Today, I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we've tackled, and we've delivered the most secure border in American history. At the southern border, we have obtained near total control with daily encounters now, down over 93% since President Trump took office. March saw the lowest number of border encounters in recorded history in the history of the United States of America at just under 7,200. That means that there were days where we had less than 200 encounters, which again is the lowest in recorded history. Under the previous administration, U.S. Customs and Border Protection was at times encountering over 15,000 people a day, which mean efforts were diverted into processing and facilitating an invasion of our country instead of doing their jobs. This astonishing turnaround is a testament to the resolve and to the leadership of President Trump to make America safe again, and it is accomplished by the incredible work of the people of the department. The secure border has allowed the Border Patrol to zero in on cartels and their illicit activity, and President Trump has designated 6 different cartels and criminal gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. This has allowed us to use a whole-of-government approach to go after drug traffickers, human traffickers, and in March, fentanyl traffic at the border fell by 54% compared to the previous year. We are enforcing immigration laws to identify, to arrest, detain, and to remove dangerous illegal criminals out of our country. And we're prioritizing individuals that have committed crimes in our communities. Aliens are a threat to our public safety and to our national security, and especially those that are affiliated with terrorist organizations such as Tren de Aragua and MS-13. This includes those who have final orders of removal in place, are a priority for this administration. We've also worked with President Trump on his America First trade agenda through the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol actions and enforcement. The Biden administration hollowed out America's industrial base, and they shipped our jobs overseas. Well, President Trump is changing all of that. His actions are proving that tariffs are an effective negotiating tool to address trade imbalances. And in fact, companies are reshoring jobs here in America every single day. The Department of Homeland Security is reforming and rethinking federal improvement in our involvement in emergency response and management as well. President Trump recently announced new members to the FEMA Review Council, which I will co-chair with the Secretary of Defense. Now, this council is charged with fixing a broken system, and it is a system that will, when fixed, return power to state emergency management directors to make America safe again. And we're also taking steps to defend the nation's transportation systems, which are vulnerable to targets and attacks. The Transportation Security Administration is responsible for ensuring the security of all of those that travel. In a single day, there are over 45,000 flights and nearly 2.9 people travel on our airlines and our passengers in the United States. We're fulfilling our obligation to enforce and to launch Real ID in order to follow federal law that was enacted nearly 20 years ago. Validated IDs will secure travel, safeguard our elections, and make sure that we never experience and work to prevent a 9/11 attack again.